Hi, welcome students. Today we are going to start this new lesson on your special request, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. If we talk of sexual reproduction, you are well acquainted with the term. It is the mode of reproduction which is biparental, that is involvement of male and female parents, and involvement of sex organs and gametes is known as the sexual mode of reproduction. And here on page number 20 you can see the vertical section of the flower, and this flower is showing different floral parts. Out of these all parts there are two most important one as far as the sexual reproduction is concerned, and these are the stamen and carpel. Stamen has a pocket like structure above or at the top, and this structure you can see here in the diagram, that is figure number 2.2. In this diagram you can see here the anther and its cross section, and on page number 22 you can find here the figure number 2.3, in which there is the cross section of the anther. This cross section of anther in the diagram 2.3b, you find that the outermost layer that encloses that forms the outermost cover of the anther is known as epidermis. The next to this is the endothecium, and further ahead towards the center if we move, we find two successive layers of called middle layer, and the last one with the prominent nuclei is the last layer of the pollen sac, which is known as the tapatum. This tapatum is the layer meant for the nourishment of the cells which are going to develop the microspores or the pollen grain. If we discuss the structure and formation of microspore or the pollen grain, the entire mass of tissue that is found inside the pollen sac is the undifferentiated mass of cells, which is known as the sporogenous tissue. These sporogenous tissue grow in size and develop into microspore mother cell. These microspore mother cells undergo a meiotic division, and by the process of meiosis, the haploid microspore tetrad, four daughter cells are formed by the division of mother cell. So the microspore mother cell, when undergoes meiotic division, it forms a group of four cells that is known as a microspore tetrad, and it is known as the pollen grain. Because of the cell has formed by the process of meiotic division, it has acquired the reduced chromosomal number, that is haploid set of chromosomes are there in the microspore cell, and the process is known as microsporogenesis. These pollen grains, if you see your book on page number 23, figure 2.4, you find here different shape and structure of pollen grain. These pollen grains have two protective layer. The outer one is known as exine, and it is made up of a hard material called sporopollenin, which is the most resistant organic material known. It can withstand high temperature and strong acid and alkali. No enzyme that degrades sporopollenin is so far known. Pollen grains exine has a prominent apparatus called germ pore, where sporopollenin is absent, and hence when these pollen grains germinate on the stigma of the flower, stigma is the top of the carpel, a flat stage like structure where pollen grains stick with the stigma and germinate to produce the pollen tube. This pollen tube comes out of pollen grain through this germ pore. The inner wall of the pollen grain is called intine, and it is a thin continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. Cytoplasm of the pollen grain surrounded by the plasma membrane. When the pollen grain is mature, it contains two cells, the vegetative cell and the generative cell. The vegetative cell is bigger and has abundant food reserve and a large irregularly shaped nucleus. The generative cell is small and floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It is spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm and a nucleus. In over 60% of the angiosperm, pollen grains are shed at this two-celled stage. This is important to note. Sometimes in your examination, such type of questions are there for you. So you have to keep it in mind that in most of the angiosperms, pollen grains are shed at this two-celled stage. So the pollen grain formation has taken place, and we have discussed it up to this point. The remaining part of this lesson will be discussed in the next video. Okay.